The objective today is still the same thing, to generate polynomial equations from their roots. An example. You have -5, 1/2, and -3/4. We're also going to add to this, not in that thick of a marker though, we will add into this a 2 as well. So we have 4 roots on this one. That means you're going to have a 4th degree polynomial equation when you insert these roots into quantities, multiplying it out and setting it equal to 0. For the quantities, change the sign of each root to come up with x plus 5, x minus 1/2, x plus 3/4, and then x minus 2. We will set all of this equal to 0. That is where those roots came from. Be certain you have changed each sign. This is negative, so we make plus, positive, minus, negative, plus, positive, minus. Now you just have to multiply them out, and that's it. There are 2 steps to these problems. There's your first step. Step 2 is just multiplying them out. You can start with the first 2 set of quantities and come up with x squared minus 1/2 x plus 5x, and then minus 5/2. And that creates another quantity by itself. And then multiply the back 2 quantities together to come up with x squared minus 2x plus 3/4, and then that would be minus 6/4, which is the same thing as minus 3/2. Next up, we're going to simplify the middle terms, here and here. It's just basic adding and subtracting fractions. So in the first one, we will still have x squared, but now we have a -1/2 plus 5. With a denominator of 2, that would make this 5 a 10. So -1 plus 10 is a positive 9. So that would be 9/2x. And then in the other set, we're going to have to simplify -2 plus 3/4. Your denominator here is 4. If I put a denominator of 4 under this, that would make this a -8. -8 plus 3 is a -5. So -5/4 x, and then minus 3/2. Next up, we have to multiply these 2 trinomials together. You're going to start no different than any other one. You start with the first item there and multiply it by each in the other quantity. So when we do that, it's x squared times x squared, which is x to the 4th. And then we'll have minus 5/4 x to the 3rd, and then minus 3/2 x squared. That takes care of this one. Move over to this one. And with this one, you'll multiply it by each in this quantity. So now we're multiplying 9/2 x by x squared. So that's going to be 9/2 x to the 3rd, and then minus 45/8 x squared, and then minus 27/4 x. And lastly, you move to this one. -5/2 multiplied against each of these items. That will give us a -5/2 x squared plus 25/8 x, and then plus 15/4. So there is everything written somewhat neatly, but they're in the columns, and you have to add those columns because that is adding like terms. You could write this all on one line left to right, but it takes up a lot of space. So I do it this way to fit it on the screen. So we have to add top to bottom. And in the first one, that's very simple. It's just x to the 4th. Then you're going to have negative 5/4 plus 9/2. The common denominator is 4. If I make this a 4, that means I multiplied by 2. 9 times 2 is 18. Negative 5 plus 18 is 13. So we end up with plus 13 over 4, x to the third. And then on this one we have 3 things to add together, 3 fractions. We have denominators of 2, 8, and 2. That means the common denominator between these 3, so that I can add them all together at one time, is going to be 8. If I have 8, and I'll zoom in on this, if I make this an 8, I had to multiply it by 4, so this one becomes a 12. 3 times 4 is 12. This one here does not have to change. It already has a denominator of 8. But down here again, if I make this an 8, I multiplied by 4. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So that's a negative 12. In reality, that is a negative 45 and a negative 20. So we will add these together. Negative 12 minus 45 is negative 57. Negative 57 minus 20 is negative 77. And we're putting that over 8 with an x squared. So we'll move over to here, and we have a 4 and an 8. The common denominator is 8. That means if I multiply this by 2, I have to do the same thing here to get a 54. Negative 54 plus 25 is going to be a negative 29. And we'll put that over 8 and then x. Of course, 15 over 4 stays where it's at, and we set everything equal to 0. So there is your polynomial equation, but we're not going to leave it in that form. We're going to get rid of the fractions. You have a 4, an 8, 8, and a 4. The number that I could multiply through this whole thing by and cancel each of those denominators on the bottom is not 4. Because if I do that, I'm left with a 4 over an 8. That's 1/2. We still end up with a fraction. If I multiply each of these by 8, it cancels out that 4 to a 2 and this 4 to a 2 on the top. It cancels out these all together. So that would be 8x to the 4th. Multiplying by 8 here gives me 8 over 4, which is 2. 2 times 13 is 26. And it just cancels out the 8 on the x squared, cancels out the 8 on the x, and then down here if I multiply this by 8, 8 over 4 is 2, 2 times 15 is 30. Our first move here is going to be insert those roots into quantities with x but change the sign. So it's going to be x plus 1, x minus 2, x minus 4, and then x plus 3, setting all of that equal to 0. Multiply the first two quantities together to get x squared minus x minus 2, and the second set to get x squared minus x, and then minus 12. Now we have to multiply both of these together, so we'll start with the first term of the first quantity and distribute it through the entire second quantity to come up with x to the 4th minus x to the 3rd minus 12x squared. And now move here to the negative x and distribute it all the way through. That will be a negative x to the 3rd plus x squared plus 12x. And then now move to the negative 2, distribute it all the way through to come up with negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 24. And now add your like terms. X to the 4th minus 2x to the 3rd. And then you have a negative 12 plus 1 is a negative 11, minus 2 is a negative 13. X squared plus 14x and then plus 24 equals 0. For this one we will have x plus 8, x plus 2, and then x minus 4. Setting that equal to 0. I'm going to multiply the back 2 first to come up with x squared minus 2x minus 8. And then multiply these two together to get x to the third minus 2x squared minus 8x. And then going to the 8, I'll have 8x squared minus 16x minus 64. Adding like terms, I'll get x to the third plus 6x squared minus 24x minus 64 equals 0.